Hi there, I'm Sito Beltran and welcome to Straight Talk. It was Dusty Springfield who sang, "The only thing that could reach me was the son of a preacher man." Our guest for today is the son of a preacher man, but he's outpaced his father, outwritten his father. I think he has one of the most prolific writing business, if you want to call it a business. But more than that, our guest for today is an authority in leadership. And it's our pleasure to present to you Mr. John Maxwell. Is it John Maxwell indeed?
Yes, it is. Nice to be with you.
I'm just trying to warm you up. You've been interviewed by something like 6-7 TV crews. How's it like being a celebrity? When you first came to the Philippines, I heard there were no media. Now you're all over the place.
You know what? You just try to help people. And what I've discovered is you help people, sometimes they notice.
Okay.
And I have just really enjoyed, whether it was speaking to one person or two people, or speaking to thousands of people in a football stadium. I just enjoy adding value to people. In fact, I remember the first time I ever did a leadership conference, which would have been 26 years ago in the States, I had 17 people at my conference.
Okay, what's going on here, John? Because traditionally, a preacher man would raise his son to become a preacher man. and now it seems that the sons of preacher men are becoming international speakers. They're reaching the media, they're going abroad, just like you. And you're probably one of the most successful at this thing.
Well, I think that growing up in a home like this, you're in front of people all the time. You're being exposed to people. You're watching your father communicate, so you pick up those communication skills. Perhaps you've got some genes within me that allows me to do it. I'm very comfortable with people. I love that my father really helped people. And when I started writing books and speaking, I only had one intent, and that was to really help people, to add value to them. In fact, the reason I wrote books and started doing that is because I wanted to influence people that I knew that I would never see. And probably the greatest joy I have as I travel internationally or travel throughout the United States is people coming up to me and saying, "Look, let me tell you, I read this book. Let me tell you how it helped me." And you know, I didn't even know they read the book. I didn't even know who the person was. And that's very rewarding, I think, to kind of like compound your values and compound your thoughts and ideas through other people, and then watch them themselves become more successful.
Okay, but what got you started in this particular expertise? Because as I pointed out, you would have probably been a successful minister.
Well, I was.
Okay.
See, for 25 years I was a pastor. And again, I was trying to, in the beginning, to help pastors learn how to lead.
Okay.
Because, you know, the good news is they're helping people get to heaven, but sometimes they don't really understand leadership. And so I began to try to help them learn how to lead more successfully. And what happened is, corporate America, the business sector, started picking up my books. And they're saying, "Wait a minute, this works here in my company."
Yeah.
And then the demand began to really increase. I didn't plan it. If I was doing a goal-setting seminar, I couldn't do it with integrity because
you would flunk it.
Yeah, really I would, because there are so many things that have happened to me that I really didn't plan. I was just trying to help people, and I helped more people than I thought that I ever would.
Would you call this destiny, or was this an evolution? Because interestingly enough, John Maxwell, the individual, is probably the most well-known, successful leadership guru in the world. And then you have the Saddleback Church coming up
Rick
with
Warren.
Rick Warren with Purpose-Driven Life.
Yeah.
Is this something special that the corporate world has not come to realize? What do you guys know that they don't?
Well, I don't think it's always that. I don't think it's always the fact that we know something that they don't know. I think that we come from a different perspective. They are hard-driving business people.
Okay.
And we bring into the picture integrity, truth, values, and I think a lot of times we bring into the picture the softer skills. I remember speaking for a the largest lumber broker in the world a few years ago, and spoke all day, taught them leadership. At the end of the day, the senior vice president raised his hand and he said, "John, I got to ask you a question." He said, "Your leadership stuff is so fresh." He said, "It's not like we're used to hearing." He said, "Where did you get your material?" And I smiled and I said, "Well, I'm not sure you want to know." And he looked at me and said, "Well, no, I really do want to know." And I said, "Well," I said, "everything that I know about leadership, I learned from the Bible." And then I really encouraged all those business people, just go read the book of Proverbs. Spend, 10 minutes every day reading the book of Proverbs. I said, in a month, you'll come up with a good idea on business, because it's just loaded. Well, I think that we do come from a different perspective, and I think it's that perspective that kind of complements the business person, kind of completes them. And now that I'm in the world, and I'm with Fortune companies all the time, and teaching them leadership, I have discovered that that they're very hungry.
Okay.
They're very hungry because they are driven, obviously, for profit. They're driven, obviously, to build business. And they're finding that, yes, we have something to add value to them, and they're very good students. They have a real desire to learn, and I find that they implement incredibly fast. Once they get the principle down, they just take off with it.
Okay. Now, what got you started along these lines? Because your father is a preacher, you're a preacher. Where did all of this begin?
It was the demand from the corporate community. What happened
was it?
I wrote books. I was writing books on leadership.
But only for your church?
Well, I was writing leadership books, but I was using mainly church examples because that was my world.
Okay.
I wrote a book back in 1994 that really kind of marked me and kind of put me on the map. I wrote a book called Developing the Leader Within You.
Within you. Okay.
That's become a major classic leadership
Before
book.
we go down that road, John, why leadership? I mean, everybody talks about profit, investment, vision. You even talked about goal setting a while ago. But why is it special to John Maxwell that we focus on leadership?
Well, because everything rises and falls on leadership. Now, that's a biblical principle.
Okay.
When Israel had a good king, they prospered. When they had a bad king, they didn't.
Okay.
And it's a principle that really works. In fact, in my 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, I have the first leadership law is the law of the lid, L-I-D. And the law of the lid basically says that my leadership skills will determine my success. In other words, I can only build a company as well as I can lead a company. I can only build a congregation as well as I can lead a congregation. And the best way I can explain it, Cito, is this. If this hand represents how well I lead, this is my leadership lid, my organization or my business will come under my lid of leadership, but it will never go higher. So my leadership ability truly determines the growth of my organization, the prosperity of my country. It's a leadership issue. And all the things that we talked about earlier, goal setting, management, all those things, they all come under leadership. And the leadership is the overarching determination of the success of an organization.
So if you have a leader who is small-minded, no vision, not a risk taker, then you're going to have a company that's going to stay down there.
Very small, absolutely.
Okay, but so leadership is important, but there are several kinds of leaders. Now, you have the American leader, like perhaps George Bush, I don't know if you're Democrat or Republican, and you have the Asian leaders. We tend to be very personal about our leadership choices. It's all about, I like the face, I like the rhetorics. Is there a commonality of leaders?
Yeah, there really is. The reason I wrote the book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, is I wanted to write a book that no matter what culture you lived in, no matter what country you lived in, no matter what chosen profession you worked in, these leadership laws would work.
Okay.
And so I said, okay, they can't be just ideas, they can't be principles, they have to be laws. Now, the thing about a law is it's universal. The law of gravity works in the Philippines and it works in the United States. And it's not like in a certain section it doesn't work. So I said, I'm going to put my leadership thoughts through a grid to see if they stand what I would call the test of what would be a law. For example, These leadership ideas or thoughts had to be able to fit every culture. So no matter what culture you had or what country you lived in, they worked. They had to be able to stand the test of time. I had to be able to go back and say, 1,000 years ago in history, was this a prevalent leadership law? Did I see this leadership law in action? They had to be able to stand the test of gender, had to be able to be effective both for men and women. And I went through this
So
career.
you're not supporting the man is better or the women know more.
Oh, no.
It's gender free.
Totally.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I have one of my companies, one of my organizations called Equip, literally is training and equipping 1 million leaders internationally. So I mean, I'm in many, many countries.
Okay.
And they're in many countries as we are training these 1 million leaders internationally. And what we have found over the years is these laws work in the Philippines, they work in the United States.
Pass the grid.
Absolutely. I was in Malaysia a couple of days ago. They work in KL. I was in Singapore yesterday. They work there. They passed the grid. I was in Africa in March and did leadership development in 4 different countries. And yes, they fit in any culture. So there are laws that everybody needs to learn. And I remember a guy one time came to me and Cito, he said, I've read your 21 Laws of Leadership book, and one of the laws I don't care for, or I don't agree with. And I said, that's okay. And when I said it was okay, it kind of disarmed him. He said, what do you mean it's okay? I said, you don't have to agree with the laws. I mean, they're still laws. It's kind of like somebody says they don't agree with the law of gravity. Well, I mean, hello, jump out of a third-story building and you'll buy into the law. Yeah. So, in fact, I laughed at him, and I did this in a personal way. I said, I didn't write the laws to make you happy. I wrote the laws to help you. And what I've discovered is there are certain laws of leadership, there are certain laws of teamwork, there are certain laws of relationships that no matter where you are, they work. Okay. And I try to concentrate on the things that really work for any generation and both genders at any time in any culture.
Okay, we'll go for a break. John, when we come back, what are some of those laws? And why does John Maxwell promote leadership, teamwork, and relationship? All of that when we come back in Straight Talk. Okay, that's the poster of John Maxwell. He's doing seminars in the Philippines. Once at the Araneta Coliseum and I think once here at the Philippine Plaza. We'll clarify all of that later. But in the meantime, John, you mentioned about leadership, you mentioned about teamwork and relationship. Now, interestingly, most of the so-called management experts have been talking about service. Go into a business that's service-oriented.
Correct.
Be service-oriented.
Correct.
And yet you're leadership-oriented, you're teamwork-oriented, and relationship-oriented.
Well, first thing I would say about leadership, though, Cito, is that leadership is servanthood. Whenever somebody says they want to be a leader, the first question I ask is why?
Okay.
I mean, do you want to be a leader because you want a good parking place? I mean, do you want to be a leader because you want power? Do you want to be a leader because you want to run people's lives? Or do you want to be a leader because you believe that you could add value to people? A leader that has a serving heart, the heart of a servant, will never manipulate people. You know, when I manipulate people as a leader, it's to move people for my advantage, and that's always wrong. That's wrong for any leader, to manipulate people. Now, leaders motivate people. They move people for mutual advantage, and that's right. But when a leader doesn't have a serving heart, what I find is they'll start using people for their own gains. And so when anybody talks to me about leadership, I always say to them, the first quality that I look for in a leader is servanthood.
Has corporate America accepted that concept? Because it seems so foreign from the concept of me first, whoever is on top of the hill is the king. It's all individualism and selfishness.
Well, I would say in the last 10 years, there's been a pretty marked change in the corporate community in America. You're right. You were describing the way it used to be, but corporate America is really changing. They're understanding what I call, again, the soft leadership skills, caring for people, taking a vital interest in people, not using people as a means to an end. And they're really realizing that if you want to develop a good business, you've got to develop on relationships. I said recently in a speech, I said, all things being equal, people will do business with people they like.
Okay.
All things not being equal, they still will. And it's a relationship-driven culture. And I think teaching people how to care for people and how to add value to them, those are principles and laws that really are making a difference and helping leaders.
When you talk about relationship, are you talking about a personal kind of relationship, or are you talking about corporate relationship? Because like here in the Philippines, we have people who join the Lions Club, the Kiwanis.
The professional relationships.
The professional relationships,
yeah.
okay.
Sure.
Now, what sort of a relationship is good for business and for your, what you talk about?
Both. Both
Okay.
professional and personal relationships. I think professional relationships a lot of times allow us to network and really meet friends. And then hopefully those relationships will become a personal one and growing relationships. So I don't think it's either or. Here's what I know. In fact, I'm writing a book right now that will be released in the beginning of 2005 called Winning with People.
Winning with people.
Yeah, and this book, basically, I talk about 25 people skills to help people understand and get along with others.
Wait a minute. Why are you into that? It's like the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership.
Or the 17 laws of teamwork.
Indisputable laws of teamwork.
Yeah.
There's always a number, and there's always a irrefutable, indisputable. Why is that?
Because I'm crazy. I just find that I really appreciate somebody that has the ability to kind of list things out for me.
Okay.
My books are easily read and easy to understand. I'm a communicator. I have an education, but I'm not an educator. An educator takes something simple and makes it complicated.
Okay.
A communicator takes something complicated and makes it simple.
Okay.
And I try to, quote, put the cookies on the lower shelf. I want everybody to have some.
Okay, so you want people to communicate, make things simple.
That's right. So therefore, my books are simply understood, and they are very practical. And I say, here are 3 things that will help you here. Here are 4 things that will help you here. And I find that people can follow it a little bit easier if I do that.
Now, is that a reflection of your personality? Are you a person who makes lists?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, so you were talking about this new book, 25...
People Principles. It's called Winning with People.
Winning with People, okay.
Yeah, but the thesis of the book is where we were going, because you were talking about relationships previously. And the thesis of the book is that almost all of our successes in life, or almost all of our failures in life, can be traced back to relationships in our life. In other words, yeah, oh, absolutely. Almost everything that I've ever had that has brought me great joy and success, I would have to connect a person with it. Almost everything in life that's caused me grief and difficulties and maybe has caused me failure in my life, I could probably put a relationship with it. I'm not saying all, but most.
Okay.
Most successes and most failures in our life can really be pointed to relationships that we've had in our life. Okay. So because of that, relationships are very essential. How you understand people, how you get along with people. In leadership, I tell leaders, people won't go along with you if they can't get along with you. I mean, you're not going to go along with somebody you don't like.
Okay.
So you have to be relationally strong. In fact, Stanford research says that 85% of our success is people knowledge, and only 15% of our success is product knowledge.
So you're saying I'm essentially a dinosaur because I believe in Peter the Great's principle that I will take you to greatness even if you come kicking and screaming.
Yeah, correct. I think that Peter the Great can say it because he had that kind of authority, but I think most of us don't have that kind of authority.
Okay.
Most of us have to use relational influence to get people from point A to point B.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with that at all.
But relational influence is misconstrued in Asia as horse trading. When you say relational influence, it must be imperative that you are in good terms, that you actually are friends with with your professional or personal relationships?
I'm not certain.
Well, here in Asia, it's like I'll be nice to you because I can get something out of you. Okay, and well, in corporate America, that used to be the case.
Sure. No, it still is. In other words,
still is. Okay.
Our niceness is based on what have you done for me lately?
Exactly.
Well, yes. I think that still is very common with all people. I think that's not common in business. I think everybody basically sits down to any relationship and says, if I'm going to invest in this relationship, what am I going to get out of it?
Yeah.
I think that's true with marriage. I think that's true with very good friends.
True with marriage?
Oh, I think so.
Okay.
I think that it is. I think that any time that people sit down and relationally decide to connect, they are connecting to a great extent for a selfish reason. That person's bringing some kind of value to them. Now, what I believe is that it's almost like the boomerang principle. If you keep helping people and you keep adding value to people, it's going to come back to you. It's going to come back to you. And I think that the abundance mindset that I'm going to give, I'm going to share, really allows you to become a generous person and influence people and become what I would call relationally strong with them.
Okay. Now, we were talking about relationships, we were talking about leadership. Now, teamwork. Teamwork is a constant in the business setting, even in family setting. But why is it that teamwork is the hardest thing to get together?
Well, because you have to bring different personalities together, and they have to give up some of their rights. They have to give some of their ego. You have to. If you and I are on the same team, I'm going to have to share more than if I'm doing this all by myself. But my goodness, I wrote the book on teamwork because teamwork makes the dream work.
Okay.
And I can guarantee you, if you and I are going to be successful in our life, we're going to be successful because we have partnered with someone else. In fact, the first law in the 17 laws of teamwork is called the law of significance. And the law of significance says one is too small of a number to achieve greatness.
One is too small of a number to achieve greatness.
Absolutely.
Complete contradiction to, hey, look out for number one.
Oh, or I'm a self-made man. You know, in the States that's an expression. I'm not sure if that's an expression here. But they'll come up to me and they'll shake my hand. They'll say, now I want you to know I'm a self-made man. And I know they want me to congratulate them, and I always look at them and say, oh, I'm so sad. Because if you've made everything yourself, you've not made much.
Okay, now I don't know if the guy's still alive, if he'll even get to see this show. Okay, but things have been said about guys like Lee Iacocca, self-made man who lifted corporations, and then when they walked away, the corporation fell. Has that got something to do with teamwork?
Well, first of all, I can tell you, Lee Iacocca had other people around him who helped him get where he was. Again. It's the old poster that says if you see a turtle on a fence post, on the top of a fence post, it didn't get there alone. Somebody had to pick it up and put it there. Here's what I challenge people with all the time. Name one person in the history of mankind that by himself or herself, without the help of anyone else, has really achieved something significant. Now that's a great question. In fact, I was in Joburg, South Africa, doing a leadership conference and a teamwork conference for about 10,000 people. And I threw out that challenge. I said, name a person that by themselves has really achieved something significant. And a guy yelled out, Charles Lindbergh. He said he flew across the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, in a plane by himself. And the people clapped. I said, well, I said, that's true. And they thought he had figured somebody out. But I said, did you know that Ryan Aeronautical Engineering built and designed the plane? And did you know that 10 millionaires financed the trip? He didn't do it by himself. I mean, he had to be in that airplane by himself flying the Atlantic, but he had all kind of help to get there. And I think that's the recognition of the need for a team when you realize that you really do need other people to help complete you in life.
Okay, we'll go for a break. When we come back, I'd like to dwell a little more on what John has been sharing with us. But let's ask John also about failure. There seems to be a lot of people experiencing failure right now, especially with our economic crisis, our political situation. How do we deal with failure? We'll find out from John Maxwell when we return. Okay, you're back here on Straight Talk, and I'm reading a book on failing forward. Now, John, this is strange. Okay?
I know it is.
The guy at the store shoved this in my face, and I said, how come I've never seen it before? And the guy said, nobody looks for those kind of books. Now, why write a book on failing?
Well, because everybody fails.
Okay.
I mean, think about it for a moment. Here's what I know about failure. Everybody fails.
Okay.
Everybody does it. Nobody likes it. I've never run into a person who said, oh my goodness, I just love my failures. I just get so energized by the things I do wrong.
Okay.
No, but everybody does it, but nobody likes it. And so I said, somebody ought to sit down and write a book that would help a person fail correctly. Because what happens is, when we say don't fail or be careful, you're going to mess up there, I mean, don't breathe. As long as we are in this world, humanly, we're going to make mistakes. So I said, the issue is not failure, it's our response to that failure that's really going to make us or break us.
Okay, now how does one fail forward? Because I was just going through the contents. What's the main difference between people who achieve and people who are average? Redefining failure and success, get a new definition of failure and success. If you've failed, are you a failure? I mean, interesting lines.
Well, basically the thesis of this book is that the major difference between successful and unsuccessful people is how they perceive failure, in other words, how they see it, and how they respond to it.
Okay.
In other words, if I see failure incorrectly, I will avoid anything that would cause my failure. I'll play it close to the vest. I'll be very careful. I won't take a risk. Or if I respond to failure incorrectly, once I have made a mistake and failed, I'll basically say, I'm never going to do that again. Oh my goodness, I've learned my lesson from that. Whoa, I won't be back there. And what I did is I wanted to write a book that people could really connect with. The only way I knew how to do it was to talk about my own failures. Now let me tell you a cute story.
Now that's interesting.
Yeah, that's right.
John Maxwell and his failures.
Oh, successful people fail a lot. They just, in fact, I would say that successful people probably fail more than unsuccessful people. Because they're attempting, they're trying things, they're taking risks.
Okay.
They're out of their comfort zone.
Is that the reason why they're successful?
Well, no, they're not successful because they failed. They're successful because they responded to failure correctly, which we'll talk about in a moment. Let me explain.
Okay.
Here we go. My wife, Margaret, and I, this would be about 6 or 7 years ago, we're going to go to on a cruise up in Norway to see the fjords of Norway. We always wanted to see them because everybody talks about how beautiful they are. So we had this cruise planned, and a few days before we left, I realized that it was going to be a 2-week cruise. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is a long time to be on a cruise. And I said, could we not go see the fjords quicker than that? But anyway, we realized that it was going to be a 2-week trip. And so I said, Margaret, if you don't mind, I think I'd like to write a book while I'm on the cruise. And she said, fine. And so it was a wonderful place to write, out there in the beautiful scenery. And I started writing this book. And by the time I was finished with the 2-week cruise, I had written the book. I was finished with it. And what was interesting is, Margaret, what I do is I write and then I throw, that's my wife, I give her things to look at and she gives me feedback and pushback. So she reads everything I write before it's ever out. So we're coming off the ship. And I love this, Cito. She stopped right out. We're just coming off the ship and she stopped and said, John, she said, I love the Failing Forward book. She said, it's a good book. Well, I said, thanks. I said, what'd you like about it? She said, what I liked about it is you talked about all your failures. And she said, any person that reads this is going to be very encouraged because you're very open about, here's what I messed up, here's what I didn't do good, and then here's what I love. She said, in fact, she said, I think that you could write a series of books on it because she said, the only problem is you couldn't get all your failures in one book. And she said, I think you ought to have a failure 101, 201, 301, 401. She said, I see a whole series of books on failures. And we just laughed. And when I was on Good Morning America, they interviewed me on this book, Failing Forward, because it kind of captured the imagination of people. And what I did is when they were asking me about it, they said, now, where did you do the research on this book? And I laughed. I said, it's the only book I've ever done I didn't do any research on. I didn't have to research it. All I had to do is look at all the things I've done and put it on paper. And what I tried to do in this book is I tried to help people understand that just because they fail doesn't mean they're a failure. And just because they fail doesn't mean they can't be successful. And I talk in there about ways to fail forward instead of failing backward.
What is the concept of failing forward?
Well, it's a concept is you're falling down. You're failing forward. But when you fail forward. You're still advancing instead of failing backward and retreating. And the concept is that you're going to.
For instance. An example.
Well, an example is that in business I have I've made a mistake perhaps and didn't have my cash flow right because my accounting was wrong. And I figure out what the problem is, and so I began to set my business up so that this won't happen again. I figure out what the problem is, and I put in the safeguards to make sure that this will always be looked at from now on. And now, really, I have a better accounting system after I failed than before I failed, because I took it, I learned from it, and improved it. Here's what I know about failure. People, when they fail, they do one of two things, and one of them will help them to fail forward and be successful. The other one will cause them to fail backwards and not be successful. Here it is. When I fail, when you fail, Sita, when our viewers fail, they either learn from that failure or they leave that failure.
They just walk away and I'm never going to do it again.
Hey, I'm not going to do that anymore. Learn my lesson. Now,
is a short on that, a short term on that, the quitter never wins?
Yes, that's right.
I remember that.
And the winner never quits.
The winner never quits.
Right. Now, what happens is if I leave my failure, I won't learn from it.
Okay.
And if I learn from my failure, most of the time, I won't have to leave it. And so whether it's in marriage, marriages that fail and break up aren't marriages that had more problems than marriages that stay together. It's just that one couple learned how to deal with the problems and the issues and the failures in a marriage.
They worked it out.
That's right. And the other couple did not.
They broke up. Absolutely. They got divorced, or they split up.
Right. So successful people so many times think that people that are successful kind of just have had an easy road, and it just it's kind of like they just kind of all of a sudden got to the top. Well, that isn't true at all. We all go through a series of failures in our lives, but if we learn from those failures, it really does make us better. And one of the things I have found is people many times, they leave their failure because they're embarrassed by it.
Okay.
They take it personal. For example, in the book I talk about the fact that one of the things I teach them is if you fall down while you're down there, clean up the floor. Pick up the toys. You're down there. What do? If I fall down, I get up real quick. I kind of brush myself off, and I look around to see if anybody noticed me, and I basically say, okay, Cito didn't see me. I'm okay. And you're over there saying, boy, John just fell flat on his face. What I have discovered is that if I am embarrassed by failure, I just want to rationalize it, or I want to hide from it, or I want to run from it, and I want to ignore it. And none of those things will teach me the lessons I learned. Now, this is very important. Successful people, I believe, fail as many times as unsuccessful people. But when successful people fail, it's in different areas of their lives. When unsuccessful people fail, it's almost always the same area.
If it's
because
money,
absolutely,
it's money.
And you know why? You know why they keep failing in the same area? They didn't hang around to learn from their failure. They just got away from it as quick as they could, and so therefore they couldn't fix it.
Run from the bank, run from the creditor.
And you know what happens? If I haven't fixed my problem, no matter where I go, I'm still going to have a problem. And that, in fact, say many times people have what I call destination disease. I failed in this job, so I think, oh my goodness, I'm going to go over and get that job.
Okay.
Or I didn't do well with relationships in that city, so I go move to another city.
Mm-hmm.
And I read an expression one time that said, no matter where you are, there you are.
Mm-hmm.
and in other words, if I am not learning from my failures, I become a carrier of them, and I'm just going to keep doing them until I can learn from them, because then I have the ability, after I learn, to change, if that makes sense.
Similar to guys or women in multiple failed relationships or marriages. They carry the same baggage.
Correct. They didn't fix the problem.
They didn't fix the problem,
Yeah,
and most of the time the problem is them.
That's correct, and that's true with all of us in our areas, and they have to hang around there long enough to understand what the issue was, and then be committed enough to change it. And then I talk about in Faith and Forward, I just talk about how do you do that? What do you have to do to be able to fail forward and get over the past and move out into the future?
What are the most common causes of failure? You were saying that most people don't even deal with themselves.
Well, one of the causes of failure, and that continues to cause more failure, is the fact that we, instead of letting go of our past, we hold on to it. In fact, I have a sign in my office that says, it says, yesterday ended last night.
Okay.
In other words, get over it. Just get over it.
Whether it was a success or a failure, get over it.
Both, whether it was a success or failure. Because if I failed yesterday and didn't do well, and I bring that baggage into today, I won't be able to focus on it today. You know what? When I failed yesterday and can't let it go, today I'm just trying to repair what I did yesterday. And I spend every day repairing instead of spending every day preparing.
It brings to mind that rhyme, nursery rhyme or something. Try and try again, or try and try until you die.
Yeah.
What's your response to that notion that you just got to keep trying even if you fail? I mean, where do you draw the line?
Well,
it's like,
I think
enough, quit.
I can help a person immediately on that. Don't try again until you know why you failed the first time. Don't try again until you have learned what you didn't know the first time. Don't try again until you're willing to change and be a different person than what you were the first time. See, our problem is if we don't have inward change and we just go try again, the same problem is going to occur. It's just like one time somebody was talking to me about practice and perfection, and I said practice doesn't make perfect, it just makes permanent. In other words, if you keep practicing on something, if you're doing it wrong, you're not going to get any better, you're just going to be permanent in it.
Permanently wrong.
So if I have a bad golf swing, it doesn't matter how many times I swing the golf club. If I have the wrong swing, if I keep practicing with the bad swing, I'm still not going to have a good outcome. The only difference is I'm going to be consistently bad. I'm going to have that bad swing grooved so well that the ball does the same thing every time. Well, that's the same way it is with failure.
Okay. The little difference between failure and success makes a big difference. I'm intrigued.
Well, the little difference between failure and success is my attitude. Think about it. Think about it.
Yeah, the difference between a good day and a bad day is your attitude.
You and I both go through a day, and every day I have something bad happen to me. It just really does. I mean, I don't mean that wrong. I'm not trying to be fatalistic, but I every day have, somebody cut me off in traffic. You know what I mean? I had the waitress didn't see me over in the corner waiting to order. And, I mean, we all have issues. Well, if my attitude is correct, it's going to make a major difference between how I treat people and how I view life and how I keep going on versus if it's incorrect. That's why I love the statement, it's not what happens to me, it's what happens in me that counts. It's not that what the person did to me, but if my attitude is right, it's going to be okay. But if my attitude is wrong, it's not going to be okay. And so it is It's the little difference that makes a big difference in handling failure.
Okay. It's what you do after you get back up that counts. People say that Lee Kuan Yew's name should be up there with that of Churchill, Roosevelt, or Reagan.
Well, it's like my college buddy who said one time, he said, John, he said, I'm never down. I said, what do you mean you're never down? Of course you're down. I'm down. Everybody gets down. No, he said, I'm either up or getting up. That's a beautiful expression. In other words, I'm either up and things are going well, or I'm getting up, which means things weren't going well, but I have determined not to stay in my failure. You know, a lot of people, when they fail, they just wallow in the failure. They just kind of stay there and not realize, okay, I have to now get back up. And, you know, if when we were learning to walk as babies, we never got back up after we fell the first time, we never learned to walk. Well, I know a lot of people, that's the way they handle failure. They fail and they never get back up. And so therefore they have an environment of failure. They have a mindset that literally is conducive to failure. And other people just pass them by, not because the other people are smarter or brighter, but the other people have learned to get over it. They've learned to let it go. And that's so key in failure. Learn to let it go.
How do you let it go? How do you learn to even let it go? Because some people in this country alone have borrowed so much money, millions, hundreds of thousands, millions, and blew it. Not because they were irresponsible, but because they didn't know any better. And they go through life saying, I lost 5 million, I lost 5 million. How do they learn to let go?
Well, when I say let go of the failure, I'm not talking about letting go of responsibility. I'm not talking about being flippant. I'm not talking about easy come, easy go kind of a mindset. What I am saying is that once we have failed, we have to understand, it's like somebody said one time, yesterday is a canceled check. Tomorrow's a promissory note. Today's all we really have. If I continually bring back yesterday to today, it's going to keep me from losing focus. So in your example, a person who maybe lost a lot of money, I'm not trying to be flippant about that. I'm not even saying that person hopefully wouldn't be able to go back and make some money and be able to repay debts and do the things that I think that they would want to be responsible for. But what I am saying is this. If I don't have the ability, once I have failed, to learn from that failure, make the needed changes and move on, I'm going to become a prisoner of myself. And I am never going to reach my potential because yesterday is bogging me down.
Just a point of clarification, John. Some people like to move on, but they never fix the problems.
Oh, absolutely.
Should they fix the problems first before they even start up on a new project?
Let's go back to what are the two responses when people fail. They either learn from the failure or they leave the failure.
Okay.
If I move on without fixing the problem, guess what happens? The same failure comes back. That's why I say people that are not successful repeat the same failures over and over again. People that are successful have probably as many failures, but they're not the same ones.
So they got to fix the problems first.
It's got to fix the problem
Okay,
first.
well, I don't have 3 days with you, so I'm going to go through all the books, develop the leader within you, Relationships 101. Wait a minute, I'm really curious about this. Equipping 101. It's not, we here in a third world country, when you say equipping, it's equipment.
Oh, no. It's training.
Okay.
It's developing others 101.
Okay.
It's the basics on how to train others. And probably it's not a good word for perhaps all cultures. But it's really about how to develop other people, because if you develop other people, you compound your dream, you compound your vision.
Okay, we are in a setting, at least for the Asian setting, where fathers are not really trained or given the mindset to train their sons to take over, except perhaps with the Chinese culture, okay, or the Chinese families. But in general, it's a, hey, I build up this company, you wait until I die, or you wait until I say you're
And
good
I think
and
that's
ready.
very sad. I think that's very sad because nobody can become a leader overnight. And I think the greatest way to train somebody is through the process of time. Let them become a part of it. Let them work themselves up from the ground floor. Let them do all the tasks, develop them. And you know, leadership done correctly, when you pass it on to the next person, it's not a gigantic step for the next person. It's the next step. It's just the natural thing to do when a person is prepared and trained correctly.
Okay, so you're saying here, equipping for success, equipping the right people. How do you know it's the right people? I mean, even in a family, in a brood of kids, it's like
That's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons I wrote the book, The 17 Qualities of a Team Player. I wanted to give people a picture of what a team player looks like, so that when they're choosing a team player, they go to these qualities and say, oh, this is what this looks like. Or I wrote a book, The 21 Qualities of a Leader, and it's the same way. I gave them pictures of what does a leader look like. So when I see one, I say, okay, they have potential. Now I want to develop them, and I want to train them.
Okay.
Because you have to have a picture of what you're looking for. If you sent me down to the airport today and said, okay, I want you to pick up Mr. Smith, but you didn't tell me what he looked like, you didn't tell me what to look for, I'd have people passing me all the time. I wouldn't know if it was Mr. Smith or not. You have to help me have a picture of him so that when I go pick him up, I know when he's coming. That's why people miss opportunity. They say, oh, boy, I wish I would have done that when I had the opportunity. Well, why did they blow the opportunity? Because they didn't know what it looked like when it was coming toward them. So I help people with, like, the laws or the qualities of a team player and the qualities of a leader. I help people look and see the picture of what they look like.
Okay, well, John, I really wish I had another day with you.
It's been fun,
But
Cito.
unfortunately, we don't have enough. The books, there's so many. How many books have you written, by the way?
Oh my, over 30.
Over 30 books, okay. And I think most of them are available in the Philippines.
Oh yes, they are.
Okay, you're having the seminar September 15 at Araneta Coliseum.
Yes.
And then September 16 at the PICC Plenary Hall.
Yes.
Okay, and it's a whole bunch of you guys. You're actually put together a team who's going to give the seminars.
I will be doing most of the teaching. Yeah, I will be doing. And on the 15th, I'll be doing the laws of teamwork. And then on the 16th, I'll be talking about the laws of leadership, and I'll also be talking about how a person can develop and grow themselves. It's going to be incredible. I'm looking forward. I love coming to the Philippines, and we're going to have a great time.
Well, we're going to have to get you next time around. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you.
That's all the time we had with Mr. John Maxwell. He knows what he's talking about. It's good stuff. If you can't attend the seminars, go buy all the books, all 30 of them.
Well, my mom has not only bought all 30, she's read all 30, but she's probably the only person on the planet that's done that.
Okay. Read up on John Maxwell. Have a good day. God bless all of you.